in Sweden. Echolocation is now in Sweden, in Stockholm. And I'm here with Samuel.
Hello.
Levani.
Hello.
And I'm Alina from Moldova. Yeah, Samuel, as you know, is from Sweden and Levani is from Georgia. And today we are going to talk about Sweden because we are here and we want to discover more about it. And it will be our fun series about when we know a country for beginners. So there will be a lot of maybe naive questions, fun questions, more serious questions. And we hope that by the end of this episode, you would find a lot of interesting facts about Swedish and Sweden. So let's start.
Say welcome to Sweden and welcome to Stockholm, the Venice of the North, as some people say, because it's a lot of water here in Stockholm.
It is indeed a lot of water. We've seen that yesterday. We had some time to walk around. And actually, we are coming in Sweden in a very important year. You're like 500 years old already as a state. What does that mean? I mean, what events did happen in the past to arrive to this celebration?
Yeah, that's a good question. We had our National Day earlier in the summer. And as you say, it was a very big celebration because they said it was 500 years since Sweden became a nation. And that, I've heard it's a bit controversial because, as you know, we have our Viking past and stuff like that. And Norway are celebrating 1,000 years. They think that they started 1,000 years ago. And I heard many people are kind of like jealous of Norway because why shouldn't we also celebrate 1,000 years and only 500 years? And that's not a big question, but a question that's talked about. But the reason why we're celebrating 500 years is because we had a union 500 years ago with Denmark and Norway. And then we had a king who stood up and had a rebellion, and he started this new Sweden, this Gustav Vasa is called. And after that we had our very short-lived empire, and now we have the peaceful Sweden everyone knows and hopefully loves.
Okay, let's learn the first Swedish word now. And let it be Sweden. Like, how do you actually say Sweden in Swedish?
Sweden in Swedish is Sverige.
Sverige. Can you pronounce that, Levani?
Yes, Sverige.
Yeah. Good. Do you think it's hard?
For this particular word, no?
Yeah, the end part is a bit hard.
The Swedish pronunciation is not very hard. It's not very far from English, but our grammar is very special. There are many rules that are very not very strict. So you need to have a feeling of the word. I've heard that is a very hard thing to do.
What are other important words to know in Swedish? Like, the basic words that if you know that, then you're fine.
I think one that's very good to know is hi. And in Sweden it's hej. So it's very, very easy.
So hej.
Hej, exactly. Thank you, tack så mycket, which also is a good word to know. And also one very useful word is fika.
Fika.
Because everyone here loves to take a fika here.
Yeah, you've said something to us about fika when we were in Georgia too. We actually had a fika there. But maybe we will come back to fika later, or why not now? Okay, you can maybe explain what's a fika for the others to know. Maybe we can invite everyone in the world to join you in this culture of fika.
Yeah, I think fika is like one of our biggest exports. So everyone talks about the Swedish fika. If it's one thing people know from Sweden, it's Zlatan or Minecraft or fika.
And Abba.
And Abba as well. And fika is I don't know how to describe it. It's just to have a coffee and a cinnamon bun. That's the thing. But we love to have so many fika breaks during the day.
Why so much coffee?
I don't really know. I was trying to research that before, just to have a good answer. But maybe it's just because it's so dark here and people need the energy. But I think nonetheless that we drink very much coffee compared to the rest of the world. I think the only country in the world that drinks more coffee than us is Finland.
If you come in Sweden, you really quickly notice that selling of alcohol is really regulated really hard. Can you explain a bit of background why that is? And how did you come to this system that you have right now?
I live with a lot of international students, and the first thing they notice is that they can't buy alcohol in the regular supermarket. I don't really know when this started. I don't know the history behind it. But the only place to buy like strong liquor and beer that's above 3.5% is in the government-run store, alcohol store. The thing is that they have very strict opening hours, and I think they have above market prices as well. So it's a bit more expensive. The interesting thing is that people in general are pretty content with the system. Like they want to have it like this, and that could seem weird to if you're outside Sweden, but I think it's a lot to do with that here in the north there's not a lot to do during the winter. So I think there's a very big fear that if we stop this system, we're gonna become more like Russia that drinks too much vodka and stuff like that. I don't know if that's true, but that's what the propaganda says.
So then you replaced the alcohol with a coffee, and
exactly,
and then you extended it into a fika, and that's
in the rest of Europe you can just take some wine for dinner, and then you are content with that. I think in Sweden, if they start drinking, they're not going to stop.
Yes, speaking of government regulations, everyone knows that Sweden has a pretty unique economic and political system, right? So, and also a lot of people are probably also noticed that taxes here are pretty high. What do Swedish people think about having such high taxes, and are they okay with government deciding all of the things?
It's a pretty political question. They say that it's like a welfare system, a welfare state. You know, we pay a lot of taxes, and in return we get like free education and free healthcare and stuff like that, and good infrastructure. And the price that we have to pay is the big taxes. And I think many people are very content with that system as well. But there's an idea of Sweden as like this socialist place that there's taxes on everything and everything is so expensive. But it's mostly income, actually. If you have like capital, there's not a lot of taxes on capital. There's not a lot of property tax. So in reality, we don't have as much taxes as people think. But when I get my pay, they take like 30 or 40% of that and shoot that away.
What's the most important economic activity here?
Historically, I've been a lot of our mines in the north. Because I don't know if the listeners know, but Sweden is very long. In the south we have our farmlands and stuff like that. There's not a lot of farmlands compared to other places in Europe. But then in the north we have like forest and a lot of mines. And historically that has been very important. Now I think we have a lot of technological and culture exports. Abba and stuff like that, Spotify, Minecraft, as I said, Skype.
Now tell us more about the music, because we've been yesterday to the Abba Museum. And
what did you think of the Abba Museum?
We had a lot of fun. It was really entertaining. Yeah, it's a really nice way to find out things about a band while actually experimenting some stuff there. I mean, they have all this kind of places where you can sing, and they even have a stage you can go on and you can feel like the fifth member of the band. So it was really fun. We know about Abba. How do you people here in Sweden look at this? I mean, are you really fans of Abba, or is more the international community fan?
That's an interesting question, because I thought that Abba was not that big. When I grew up, I thought Abba was like, it's a relatively small band, like Swedish band. Abba is played at every party, at least one song. I had one international student that I knew from Australia, and she said, I love Abba, it's my favorite band of all time. And that was like so weird for me.
Do you have a favorite song?
From Abba? Yeah, I love Money. That money. Exactly that one. There's a lot of good Abba songs there. Yeah. They are very good.
What about the other famous musicians?
Like international, I think Avicii is really good. I don't really listen that much to Swedish music, but we have some artists that you don't even really think are Swedish, because many people here speak really good English. So a lot of Swedish artists do English music. Sometimes I just look up an artist and like, this one artist is good. Oh, it's from Sweden.
I totally agree, and I actually had a question about that, because when I was young and I hear in 90s and in start of 2000s a lot of Abba, I always thought that they were English or American or something, because their language, how they sang and spoke, was really, really like kind of native English. I also later on, as I met a lot of Swedes and Norwegians also, I discovered that they speak almost fluent English. How is that possible? Because in other European countries, you don't get that. In Germany also, they speak English, but their English is not perfect. How do you manage to speak such a good English?
For me, it was a lot of internet, But I think compared to Germany, a lot of our programs are not dubbed. They're just
subtitles.
Just subtitles, and then people learn a lot. I think that's a really big reason, and also our education system. I'm gonna be modest.
And since we are now still in this cultural area of topics, I have this tradition whenever I go to a country I visit, I try to find a local author. I have my limitations to the ones that are translated into English, but I love to buy something from a country I visit. So now I have this dilemma. What should I buy from here? What local authors are here famous, and what would you recommend?
There's a lot of really good Swedish authors. One, my personal favorites, I don't know if they are translated to English. There's one that's Jonas Hassan Kamiri is called. It has a very interesting language. He's a very good author. Then there's also, and then also we have our very famous old author, Selma Lagerlöf. Maybe it's not that known outside of Sweden, but she's really good.
Okay, some famous Swedish movies. How is the cinema?
The most famous Swedish director is Ingmar Bergman, who is very internationally known. He's your favorite director's favorite director. He has some very classic artsy films. My favorite of his is The Seventh Seal, or Sjunde inseglet. It's not a light-hearted film.
It's not surprising,
No, exactly. It's in that sense, a very stereotypical Swedish film. Ingmar Bergman.
Levani, I think we need to change to food.
First question, I think, especially people coming from Eastern Europe might have about Swedish food in general is we all heard the term Swedish table in our part of the world, which is referring to a kind of a buffet type of deal where you have the big table and you have a lot of food and you go there and pick it up. It's pretty unusual in our culture, but nowadays it's really popular. So I wonder how popular is that in Sweden, and actually what's the reason that it might be called Swedish table?
In Sweden it's called smörgåsbord, and it's when you have a separate table with a lot of different dishes. I don't know why it's called like that. I think it's from the tradition from the south of Sweden, I think, when they have a lot of different smörgåsar is like sandwiches, but not really. And they have a tradition to have a lot of different dishes on the table. I don't know why it's so well known outside of Sweden. I think in English, or in American English at least, it's called smorgasbord.
What about bars and popular drinks there? Because we noticed that a lot of people really like beer, as in other countries. But do you have some type of local Swedish drinks that are popular and people drink?
When we go out, we drink a lot of beer, normally as anyone else. But then we have a special alcohol culture for our different tradition, like midsummer, and we have small glasses with a special kind of alcohol called snaps. So I would recommend trying that.
Okay, we need to do that for sure. Yesterday we tried some traditional dish. We really liked it. I cannot really explain it. I mean, what was it? But it was a huge meatball. But yeah, maybe you can tell us more about the traditional foods here. This typical traditional food that, I don't know, for example, in Moldova and Georgia, we would use those traditional foods for every family celebration probably, and in general we would eat it every day. Is it here how it is? Do you have this kind of foods that you eat it all the time, or you use it for your special holidays?
For our different holidays, we have a lot of pickled herring with different flavors, and a lot of potatoes and meatballs. I think that would be our most famous dishes.
Speaking of food, we really liked yesterday what we ate, of course, but we were wondering what are some things that a foreigner or a person outside of Sweden can do to offend you guys, or do some controversial thing. For example, sitting in a bus next to you when there's place to sit otherwise, or looking at the eyes of people, because I've heard that there's at least a kind of stereotypes that Swedish people don't like this.
One thing Swedish people really want is their personal space and our cues. If there's an empty bus and I'm sitting at a seat, when there's another seat free, you can't come and sit beside me. That is very weird in the eyes of the Swedish person. And also if you talk with the strangers, like on the street or just like in the city with people that you don't know, also a bit weird. We don't like to talk to strangers.
So this is not a stereotype after all.
No, it's not a stereotype. I think that's pretty true.
Accurate.
Exactly, for the Swedish person. And also something that would offend every Swede is like if we have a queue and you try to go like before other people in the queue, people are going to get very mad because everyone here respects the queue system so much.
What about your special holidays as a nation, but also inside the family? What kind of days are you celebrating and are important for you?
I think we have like the normal holidays in Western Europe, Christmas, Easter, New Year's. But we also have some more special Swedish ones. Then also I'm a student, and we students have a special kind of holiday as well, which is called the Valborg. And it's in the last April. You skip all of like school and stuff like that. You don't have school. And all the students have a lot of activities. They just drink and drink and drink and drink. And there's like total chaos at every student city. It's very interesting tradition. In my city where I'm from Uppsala, which is a bit north of Stockholm, which is a student city. We have like a river basically in the middle of the city. And people... engineers students build their own boats and try to cruise through the river, and almost everyone fails. And everyone looks. It's very entertaining.
Actually, that goes well with my next question, because everyone knows that up in the north, in the winters especially, you don't get a lot of sunlight. There's mostly darkness and wet weather and all of that. So how do you cope with that other than building your own boat and trying to cross the river with that?
I think people try to cope in different ways. The coffee, I think that's a really strong coping mechanism. But in many people that don't cope actually, and you know that talking about the seasonal depression and stuff like that, here in the north it's very real. I think it's like a whole medical thing because people don't get sunlight, you get kind of depressed during the winter. So many people, they're just trying to survive, like especially through November and December. It gets really dark.
And how cold can it get?
Up in the north, it can get really cold. Down in the south where I live now, it's maybe the coldest like -11 or -8.
Do you have places in the north where there is snow all over the year?
I've actually never been like north. So I don't really know, but I think there's some places, like especially with the mountains, there's snow all the time.
Have you seen the Northern Lights?
Ever? No, I haven't. And I always, that's something I really want to see. And I'm so sad because for all my time that I lived in Uppsala, there were never Northern Lights. It's just more north. But as soon as I moved south, the Northern Lights started to be seen in Uppsala as well. And I'm so angry over that.
Are there any must-do things for Swedes to do in Sweden? For example, see the Northern Lights, or I don't know, do some kind of hike on a mountain? Because in Georgia, and I know that there are a lot of places where most Georgians have to go because it's kind of like cultural thing. So do you have same type of places?
No, I don't think, not in the same sense in Georgia, because I know you are very nationalistic people, yeah. I think more than the Swedes. But there's some places that's really beautiful that I think people should go. And that's the north. You can hike in the north. There's beautiful nature reserves. There's also in the eastern part of the south of Sweden, they have nature there as well, called Österlen. And also we have our little island in the middle of the Baltic Sea called Gotland, which is also a very picturesque, very beautiful. Yeah, you should visit if you get the opportunity.
How is your relationship with, let's say, your neighbors, Norway or Denmark, or on the other side of Baltic with Finland or Estonia? Or in Georgia, from Georgian and from Eastern European perspective, I think all the countries that are neighboring with each other, they have pretty unique relationships. Sometimes not that good and sometimes really funny also. So do you have some type of like jokes with Norwegians or some other than, I don't know how, Danish people?
Yeah, we have like fun rivalry between Norway and Denmark mostly. And like we have a lot of jokes, like especially with Norway. If you do something bad, you're doing it Norwegian style. There's one game that's called a Norwegian drunk or something, being drunk Norwegian style. And it's when you have a pole that you put on your head and you spin really fast and you just get very dizzy. And we say, oh, you're drunk Norwegian style. But we have a good relations and we don't hate each other on the in any real sense. There's a lot of like just jokes and they do it to us as well.
I think Georgia and Armenia has the same type of relationship. That's why I asked. And how also important do you think the Viking culture is in general for Sweden and all of these countries? For most of the people around the world, Scandinavia is more or less associated still with this Viking culture. How strong do you think that is today as a part of a culture?
I think it was so long ago, I think more than 1,000 years ago. So the Viking culture is not that big, you know. We are not like the Vikings that we go around and plunder different nations and run with axes and stuff like that. But I think for the legacy behind it and for our like own image of our nation, I think it's very big still. I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, pretty much, because you see the fighting spirit, for example, with like Icelandic people especially, where there's like not a lot of them, but they are in sports especially, right? You can see that. And actually, speaking about sports, are there any really popular sports like hockey or some others that Swedish people do? And if there are, what kind of sports are?
The biggest sports are hockey, the more north you go, and in the whole of Sweden it's also football or soccer. It's that's really big. We had a women national World Cup that we came third, and it was a very big deal here in Sweden. Everyone was so proud. But I think football and hockey are the biggest sports. There's also some other sports that are pretty big. Bandy. Have you heard of bandy? No, maybe it's just a Swedish sport. But it's like hockey. It's like a football field but on ice. And instead of the hockey puck, you have like a small ball. It's very, very similar. That's very big. And also handball. Do you know handball?
Yep.
Yeah, that's one also.
Before recording this, Levani actually made a fun exercise and asked ChatGPT what it would like to know about Sweden. And we came up with a fun question. Maybe Levani could.
Oh, yeah, sure. But, well, there are a lot of cool answers from ChatGPT, but one of the questions that we also thought was really interesting, for example, about lagom, balance of moderation, and the concept of lagom, right? And how big of a role it plays in Swedish culture. And if you could explain this balance of moderation to our listeners, that would be really good.
And that's a really good question, because lagom is a word that's so associated with the Swedish culture. But at the same time, it's very hard to explain what lagom is. I think there's no word in English that's properly describe it. It's like moderation being in between two extremes. So instead of doing this or that, you do it in the middle. That's lagom.
Yin and yang kind of balance thing?
Yeah, maybe. Not that. I think most people don't have the as like poetic, like romantic.
In what
sense.
kind of context do you can use it? Like in a fight where you ask somebody to be lagom, or is it a noun or an adjective? Or can you ask somebody to be lagom or?
Yeah, but it's like it's a thing that you are. It's very hard to describe. But it's like the coffee I'm drinking. It should not be too hot or too cold. It should be lagom.
Just
right. Exactly. It's just right.
Oh, okay.
And it's not only with things, it's also like with the culture in general. Like people shouldn't stick out too much or be too active, but not too passive. They should be right, precise in the middle, and that's lagom.
Where is that balanced for you or some in general for Swedish people?
I don't know if like it's a balance. It's not like in a religious sense that you need to find the middle way and find your inner balance. It's just with with the culture that the Swedish culture is very individualistic in a sense, but also a lot like you shouldn't stick out. Everyone should be very the same in a sense. There's one thing called jantelagen in Sweden, and it's that you shouldn't brag.
Oh, okay.
You should be very
modest, right?
modest about everything. And that's also, I think, part
And
of
that's
the
in the
lagom
design
culture.
also of the houses, and you can see it in the...
Yeah,
right?
but exactly. And if you get like a promotion, you shouldn't brag about that.
Mhm.
You should be very
Reserved somehow.
reserved with that.
Modest.
Modest,
Modesty.
exactly.
So, and what's your relationship with religion here?
In a sense, we are a Christian nation because we have our Christian legacy. The Swedish church was very big, and it was the state religion until 2000. So I think it's, or around that. So it's not that long ago we abolished it. But as a nation, I think it's very atheist. I don't know many people that would describe themselves as religious. Many people would describe them as like atheist, or like maybe they think there's something, but they are not sure. Then there's also religions because we have a lot of immigrants in our country. We have a lot of immigrants from the Middle East. They are a big minority. But
Speaking on foreigners, I wonder, is it common for Swedish people to date foreigners? And if it is, how common do you think?
I think it's pretty common. There's not like a taboo associated with like dating foreigners that I know. I think there are in like some other countries, or maybe that you can't date foreigners of a specific place. That doesn't exist in Sweden, I think. And I think it's pretty common for people to travel to different places around the world and find someone and bringing them to Sweden. My father is from Latin America, and my mother was traveling through Latin America and took my father to Sweden. I think that's a very common experience. And also, there's a lot of older men that travel to Thailand and find a wife that they bring back to Sweden. Like I have a friend who studied in the north in Piteå. It's a very small city in the north. And he said that there's a community in that city of Thai women have been brought from Thailand to the north by these men. So I don't think there's a taboo at all.
That's
It's
really
even
true.
more, I mean, it's more relaxed than a taboo. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. It's
you are
like the
going to take
opposite.
other people outside the country.
Actually, speaking on taboos and all of that, I was wondering, since Sweden is kind of monarchy, right? How do people view that? And how important of the part of the culture is that actually?
As a Swedish person, I forget that we have a king. It's not a big part of the culture or the country at all. For our everyday life, he's not visible. Sometimes he goes to a city and then there's a bit of commotion because, oh, the king is in our little city. But as he's not that visible and it's not a crime to offend the king, like I can talk shit about the king if I want to, then people don't really care that we have a king. He just exists.
Okay, he's on his own. So
He's on his own, exactly. He get his money, he live in his palace.
But then what are those symbols that you cannot touch, actually? Not the symbols that, like national symbols that you cannot offend, because you can offend the king, but what are other like more sacred symbols? For
So-
example, we have like some limitations of using the flag, you know. Like you cannot use the flag in all the circumstances you want. There are some limitations.
It's a big topic now in like the Swedish media and politics because we value our freedom of speech a lot here in Sweden. And that has started a lot of controversies because there are some people that maybe want to offend minorities or express some extremist views, that they get allowed to do that. It's a very big question that everyone is talking about right now. So I wouldn't say that we have any kind of like symbols that are not a physical symbol that you can't touch. Like answer this
that's
question.
an interesting point of view, actually. I think we are coming close to finishing this. It was a really interesting conversation, and we definitely found out a lot of interesting facts about Sweden. But we cannot leave Sweden without a souvenir. So what's the most common souvenir that tourists can buy? Something more special, you know?
like a hat with horns? Or
Like one symbol for the whole of Sweden is a red horse called Dalahäst. I don't know if you've seen that. It's a red horse,
Okay.
often made of wood, which have some kind of like colors on it. It's very beautiful. That is a very Swedish symbol. So if you want to have something in your home that's like, oh, this is Swedish,
The
and
red horse.
a red horse called Dalahäst.
what's the meaning behind it?
I don't really know if it has like a meaning, but it's like from a specific region in Sweden called Dalarna, and they have preserved their culture, their like regional culture a lot. That's specific to Dalarna, and one of those things is Dalahästen.
What about the Swedes? Can we buy some Swedes as souvenirs?
Yeah, something that's also very common here in Sweden and in Finland is our licorice, salt licorice.
They have a very specific taste.
Yeah, I don't know if you're gonna
Not
like it.
everyone
No,
likes.
because it's very like an acquired taste.
Yeah, that's how a souvenir should be.
Exactly.
Memorable. All right.
Yep, I think it was quite interesting, right, Alina? We got answers to a lot of questions. Thank you, Samuel.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to our listeners to be on this journey with us. We found along the way interesting things about Georgia, about Moldova, and now about Sweden. So feel free to visit any of these countries, listen to our episodes about the countries, and get ready to visit them properly. So I think that was all. Bye, and we will keep in touch for the next episode of Echolocation. So stay tuned.